Hi, I'm Dr. Jamie Caroon. In this video, we are going to look at a 2020 randomized controlled trial that investigated the use of a CBD-rich hemp extract in overweight but otherwise healthy adults. The study is entitled Effects of Hemp Extract on Markers of Wellness, Stress Resilience, Recovery, and Clinical Biomarkers of Safety in overweight but otherwise healthy subjects. It was published in June of 2020 in the Journal of Dietary Supplements. This study was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Participants were overweight but otherwise healthy adults recruited from a local suburban community in Ohio. The study compared a CBD-rich hemp extract taken orally to a control, which they call a placebo, which was olive oil. There were a variety of subjective and objective outcomes measured in this study, including psychometric factors like stress, perception of sleep, quality of life, stress resilience, and others. These patient-reported outcomes were measured via a visual analog scale. There were also objective measures, including biomarkers like lipids, including cholesterol levels, liver enzymes, and even body composition that was measured using a DEXA scan. We will go through some of these outcomes more carefully in a few moments. Before we do, I should mention here that I am a paid member of the Medical Advisory Board of CV Sciences. CV Sciences is the manufacturer of Plus CBD oil, a leading brand of hemp-derived CBD products, and they are the funding entity of this study. Here is a simplified outline of the study design. There was an in-person screening visit to determine eligibility, followed by 3 additional visits: a baseline visit, a visit at week 3, and then at week 6. Subjective and objective data were collected over time. Both groups were instructed to ingest 1 soft gel capsule each day with breakfast for 6 weeks. 68 participants were randomly allocated to the 2 groups. There were 33 participants in the CBD-rich hemp extract group and 32 in the olive oil group. The groups were the same except for age. They were different. Control group was 3 years older on average. 79 individuals were assessed for eligibility at the screening visit, and 68 of them were randomized to one of the 2 groups. Participants were matched according to sex and body mass index prior to being randomly assigned. 3 individuals withdrew their consent before receiving either the study drug or the control. All participants who received the study drug or control completed the study. One of the exclusion criterion was regular exercise more than 3 days per week. So if a participant was exercising more than 3 days per week, they were excluded from this clinical trial. After being allocated to one of the 2 groups, the participants in both groups were asked to increase their exercise from whatever it was to at least 5 days per week. I should point out that this increase in physical activity could potentially explain changes in many of the outcomes, especially the metabolic outcomes like cholesterol levels, including HDL cholesterol, which, as we will see in a moment, increased in the hemp extract group. Participants were asked to maintain their normal diet. The study drug was provided by CV Sciences. CV Sciences is based in San Diego, California. Each soft gel capsule contained approximately 15 milligrams of hemp-derived CBD and less than half a milligram of THC. This is a certificate of analysis for the gold formula, which was the formula used in the study. This is not the actual certificate of analysis for the batch that was used, but it's close enough for our purposes. Both groups were instructed to ingest 1 soft gel capsule each day with breakfast for 6 weeks. You can find out more about CV Sciences at pluscbdoil.com. With regard to the statistical analyses, a mixed factorial ANOVA was used with repeated measures on time. The effect sizes were measured using a Cohen's d formula. 0.2 was considered a small effect size, 0.5 was considered a medium effect size, and 0.8 was considered a large effect size. The threshold for statistical significance was a p-value of 0.05. With regard to adverse events, they were generally very low, which is not surprising given the dose that was used in this study. In fact, only 3 of the individuals reported an adverse effect, and there were more in the placebo group than there were in the active treatment, but only by 1. With regard to results, as I mentioned, there were many outcomes in this study. Changes were compared to baseline and to the placebo, so within group and between group differences. But the statistically significant changes presented here represent changes over time, not changes as compared to the placebo group. Statistical significance is represented in red. There were no changes in weight, body composition, or red blood cell or white blood cell indices. There were statistically significant changes reported in the patient-reported outcomes of sleep quality, sleep quantity, pleasure from life, and stress resilience, as measured by a brief resilience scale. As you can see, the effect size of the changes is in the right-hand column as well. Most of these changes were of medium effect size. With regard to HDL, the effect was medium-large, and with regard to stress resilience, it was small-medium. The participants' diets did not change. With regard to the discussion, this was the first randomized controlled trial that I'm aware of that used a CBD-rich hemp extract. And I give CV Sciences a lot of credit for investing in research. Most companies don't do that. In the discussion, the authors note the safety and tolerability of the intervention. They say there were no dropouts and that there were no changes in the markers of liver function and other biomarkers. They also describe an important aspect of CBD, in quotes, research, in that most of the research to date has used a highly purified cannabis extract, which is basically isolated or pharmaceutical CBD. Whereas the products available on store shelves today, for the most part, are full-spectrum extracts, which can contain hundreds of biologically active compounds. And so these two things may be different, and they may lead to different effects in the body. This also means that it's difficult to draw a cause and effect relationship here between one molecule in this extract, CBD, and the various outcomes. At best, what we can say is that the extract itself led to the changes in the outcomes, and we can't be sure that it was the CBD itself. And then finally, the authors speculate on a potential mechanism that may explain the increase in HDL, and that is antagonism of CB1 receptors, which is one of the mechanisms that CBD uses to exert its effects in the body. Negative allosteric modulation, which is a form of antagonism. Every study has its limitations. This study was relatively short and used a low dose of CBD that was administered only once a day. As with other studies, there are genetic differences between these participants that we are not aware of and that may be responsible for differences in how participants responded. Also, these changes were observed in overweight adults, so non-overweight adults may not experience the same changes. Also, without a comparison of a different dose or frequency, we have no way of knowing whether the results would be different at different dosages. And finally, the study was funded by an entity that has a stake in the outcome, and that's CV Sciences. Although the authors state that CV Sciences played no part in designing the study, in collecting and analyzing data, or preparing the manuscript, it's always good to be aware of the funding entity and the potential conflict of interest. So in conclusion, the CBD-rich hemp extract at the dosages used in this study, 15 milligrams per day, appear to be safe and well tolerated. Several variables which are measured on a visual analog scale exhibited statistically significant improvements, particularly sleep quality, sleep quantity, and stress resilience. As far as objective measures, HDL cholesterol was increased in the CBD-rich hemp group from a mean of 54 to a mean of 57.5. So an increase of 3.5 points in HDL cholesterol, which was deemed a medium to large effect size. The outcomes may vary with different dosages and frequencies in different populations. And we need more randomized controlled trials to corroborate these findings and determine if different dosages and frequencies would lead to different outcomes. Thank you for your time and your attention. If you have any questions or any feedback, please email me at jamie@karoon.com. Thank you. Also, please return to Dr. Journal Club for more studies like this.